is a parable we know really well. The parable of the prodigal son. It's sort of the backbone of our theology as the church, of our faith. Even though the vast majority of us haven't walked the path of the younger son, but have walked the path of the older brother. Now, I've known people that were like the younger brother in my years. I've known some people that were just like that who came back to Jesus, and I'm sure God did throw a party for that individual when they returned, and unfortunately, their families did not. There's too much brokenness and heartache in their families. But we know this story very, very well. Almost too well in some ways. And I want to lay a little bit of background before I get into my sermon today, which is just simply this, keeping in the context of what Jesus was teaching at this moment as he goes around throughout Galilee teaching. He's not walking around teaching like you might think. He's literally just living his life. He has followers. They journey around. They eat. They sleep. They wake up. They get up. They go by foot again, and they journey. As they go, they encounter people like you and me. They encounter people just living their lives. Maybe they're farmers. Maybe they're blacksmiths. Whatever they may be, he's encountering people like tax collectors. He's encountering people of ill repute, women and others. And as he does so, he begins teaching these individuals that you don't have to be broken like this. You don't have to be living a life in a way that keeps you damaged and in unhealthy places. In some cases, he encounters people who are sick. He encounters people who are demon-possessed. And he heals them. But whenever he does this, also keep in mind, he uses this as a moment to teach. And so up until what you heard Gerald read today, Jesus has been doing this. He has been healing people. And when he's been doing this, the people who have power and authority, be it the scholars or the Pharisees or others, the right sort of people, look down upon him and say, you shouldn't be doing this. And in that famous moment, he looked at some of those individuals and said, yes, but would you really leave your donkey down the well or your ox down the well? Wouldn't you get the ox out of the well? If your kid's sick, don't you want to take him to the doctor and get him well? And I love it when he does this, they say nothing back. So he goes on, he teaches some more about humility and how to treat other people when you come together, etc. He teaches as he's journeying about how hard it is to follow him, because as he does this, those people who hear this teaching go, there's something here. There's something that has meaning for my life here where I didn't find much before. And so the people start crowding around him more and more. And as he's journeying ultimately to Jerusalem, great crowds have gathered around him. And I love Jesus. As I said downstairs, you don't want to follow the Jesus model to grow a church. Because he turns to the people following. He goes, are you sure you want to follow me? Do you hate your mother and father? What? Do you hate your brother and sister? Because if you don't, I don't want you. And he says, wait a minute. You need to pick up your cross and follow me as well. And this is not some metaphor of like, well, okay, I got issues and hang-ups. I'm going to go ahead and follow Jesus. It means you need to suffer and die for something greater than what you are personally. And if you're willing to do that, please follow me. But if not, don't. This is literally his words in Luke chapter 14. And then there's this one day after that where he's sitting around, he's with tax collectors and sinners, people of ill repute, in other words, not the right sort of people. And they're listening. And the Pharisees and the scribes, they're grumbling, and they say, why does he spend time with those kind of people? So he turns and he teaches them about that famous story. I'm sure you know it really well. If you've got 100 sheep and one wanders off, do you go, well, that's just the one. I got 99 more. You know how that ends, right? We all know that one just as well as the prodigal son. No, you go and you look. If you're a good shepherd, you go and you look for that one that's lost. Remember that woman that lost a coin? She looked all over her house, and when she found it, she was so excited she had a party. It's a good reason to clean your houses. And then Jesus says, you know what? There was this man who had 2 sons. Now, you got to put this in context. We know the story so well, but the context is he's been teaching about who are the right sort of people and who are not. And it's not the sort of people we think about. He's teaching about what is God like when in the kingdom of God. He's been teaching about what does it mean to understand how you see other people. The value and the worth of humanity. Because everybody has a value and a worth. Even the one who has squandered everything. There was a man who had 2 sons. I've known this parable so well over my life that honestly, it doesn't mean a whole lot. See, I'm not that kid that wandered off and squandered everything. I was raised in the church. I didn't have a drug problem. Not an alcohol problem. I didn't have issues. Yeah, I went through a terrible divorce that was awful. I was angry during that. But in a lot of ways, I'm not this boy who wandered off. So when people go, well, but it's about if you just come to Jesus, how Jesus gets excited because you're a sinner. That's not at all the image that's going on here. That's part of the image. I heard this parable so much that it began to lose its power on me. And the reality is it began to lose its power on a lot of us a long time ago. The younger son's selfish greed, the older son's arrogance, fury, the patient father's extravagant love, all the story's meanings start to go in one ear and right out the other over time. There's a famous Christian writer named Barbara Brown Taylor, and she says it this way about the parable. She says it became limp with too much handling. I want to talk about that today. Because the reality is, the vast majority of us in this room, the majority of us watching this online, grew up in the church, or we've been in church for a really long time. We know this parable so well that it's lost its power. Because it does have a power for us. As I was getting ready for today, I often do this. I'll read different theologians. I'll read different sermons by other people. I'll look at different ways to interpret a text and take a look at it. And I came across this one theologian I thought was kind of interesting. Her name is Debbie Thomas. Not to be confused with Debbie Thomas, the Olympian. They even look similar, by the way. I double-checked to make sure. I went take a look. I'm like, they are awful close looking. Was she an Olympian first, then a theologian? Did you have a life-changing experience? Nope. 2 separate people that I can tell. But I read something she wrote about this, and I want to share it with you today. So these are not my words, but they are my heart. She wrote 2 letters. She wrote a letter to the younger brother that left home, who ran away. And she wrote a letter to the older brother who stayed home. So I invite you to hear these words that the theologian Debbie Thomas wrote. To the boy who ran away, I begin with you because you're the strangest and least accessible to me. Impetuous, careless, demanding, so selfish, you take my breath away. On the face of things, you and I have little in common. I've never run away or squandered an inheritance or given myself over to dissolute living. What a great phrase. Thank you, Gerald, for reading that. When you read that, I was like, I love that word and that phrase. Dissolute living. But neither have I felt the ardent, tear-soaked embrace of a love-sick father, human or divine, welcoming me home. Maybe this is why I dislike you. Am I envious because God is generous? Am I hurt because the Father's love is a wild, unfettered thing, unpredictable and unfair? Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Here's what I'd like you to know. Was your penitence genuine? Did you mean that pious speech that you composed in the pigsty, or were you just a clever talker, well-versed in your father's soft spots? Did you feel bad about your adventure, or just bad that it had failed dramatically? Here's the other thing I'd like to know. Did you really get your act together? Once the party was over and the fatted calf was eaten, did you get up early the next morning and pull your weight in the fields? Did you apologize to your brother, take care of your father, make peace with the villagers that you scandalized? Did you understand in your heart that really there's no such thing as going home? Not in any simple way. Did you get that everything, and I want you to hear that. Did you get that everything would have to change? Here's what I really need to know. What is this bitter root in me that needs a guarantee? That wants to make sure that you understood just how much fear, destruction, and sorrow you caused before I let you off the hook? Why do I need to withhold the forgiveness that alone might restore you? What will I gain if you bleed repentance first? See, I know this is a problem, my spite, my withholding. Everything in me accuses you of having no empathy, of not caring at all about how you ripped your father's heart out of your chest. But the truth is, I'm struggling pretty hard to empathize with you. So I'm digging down, trying extra hard to find that tender places where you really live. Who are you beneath the labels, beneath prodigal, beneath selfish, beneath sinner? Dying of hunger. That's how your story describes your final days in that far-off country. When your costly adventure was over, when your funds ran dry, when your so-called friends abandoned you, there among the pigs covered in filth, you finally realized who and what you were. Dying of hunger. She writes, may I give you a new label, a new name, one I can relate to. Aren't you at the very core then, the hungry one? It was hunger, wasn't it, that first lured you away from the good life and a good father? A gluttonous hunger, maybe, but hunger still, for freedom, self-expression, and novelty. Something in you, something wild and insistent, needed feeding. But here's the thing that knocks the breath out of me. Your father, in his vast, unorthodox wisdom, understood. You see, he didn't hold you back. He didn't decide what your journey should look like. He let you go. What did he know that I refused to know? That you couldn't return home without leaving first? That you couldn't taste resurrection without dying? That maybe lostness is part of the deal, the prelude to the most magnificent finding? Can it be that I too need to know such hunger? Know it on the tongue, in the gut, like a fire in my bones, before I can actually savor the feast? The Father understood. What a remarkable thing that is, his deep and patient comprehension of how life and desire actually work. He respected the hunger that pulled you away. He knew a wiser, sharper hunger would bring you home. Was it admirable what you did? I don't know. But there is this. Even though it cost you, even though it wounded your family, you honored your hunger. I can't speak to the righteousness or the rightness or the wrongness of your decision, but maybe there is something in it that I should attend to. You see, I usually ignore my hunger. When I can't ignore it, I hide, I minimize it, I vilify it. Is there a chance that my hunger wants to point me to God? Your journey ends in a passionate embrace, unrestrained welcome, overflowing joy. Were you grateful? Were you indebted? Did you try extra hard in later years to earn the feast your Father lavished on you? Or did you simply rest in his prodigal love, knowing it can never be earned? It seems your Father didn't much care. He just wanted to feed and clothe you. It seems your Father didn't care. He just wanted to feed and clothe you. There's so little of your experience that I can applaud. Despite my best attempts to reconcile my heart with yours, my envy remains. Your Father ran to welcome you. He cared for nothing in this world so much as having you safe and snug in his arms. No matter what preachers say, this is not everyone's experience. To hear we are loved is one thing. To feel ourselves embraced is another. You are fortunate. Do you know that? Something jealous in me wants to make sure you know it. But something broken in me wants to reach you too, to build a bridge between your life and mine. What do you know that I know too? I know what it's like to hunger for life, for depth, for passion, for joy. I know what it's like to imagine an exotic elsewhere, a more perfect nourishment miles away from my Father's all too familiar table. I know lostness, the lostness of being small and sorry and stupid in a world that is too big and unwieldy to manipulate or control. I know what it's like to come to myself in the broken, impoverished places that I create in my own heart. And I know what it's like to feel shame. Shame that I've disappointed everyone. Shame that I'm a damaged goods. Shame that I'll never, ever be enough to earn the love that I crave. I still don't like you, brother. But maybe we're not really that different after all. Now that is Miss Thomas's words to the younger brother who left and saw how he was met by the Father. Hear these words that she wrote to the boy who stayed home, the good son. I won't lie, my sympathies are with you. Your story haunts me. Your resentments mirror mine. Whenever I think of you standing appalled outside your father's house, your brother's easy laughter ringing in your ears, I ache inside. I imagine you sore and sweat-stained after a day in the fields, longing to go inside for a shower, a meal, a bed, longing for so many legitimate things, only to be thwarted by a robe, a ring, and a fatted calf, not intended for you. Theologians tell me I'm supposed to look at you and see self-righteousness, arrogance, and unholy spite, but I don't. I look at you and I see your pain. She writes, I'm an oldest kid too. I'm used to being the responsible one, staying home and getting things done. By temperament, I'm careful. I like order. I don't mind work, but I am a stickler about fairness. I care a lot about fairness. I am also, to be fair, a seether. I don't confront, I seethe just like you. Tell me, how long did the bitterness fester? How many weeks, months, or years did you suffer in silence, mistaking restraint for righteousness? Did your father shrink in your eyes as your anger grew? Did every word he spoke, every request he made, every sigh he sighed grate on your nerves? Did you lie in bed at night and wish you'd had the audacity to leave like your brother did? Or maybe it was another kind of courage that you lacked. The courage to cry, the courage to plead, to confess a need so insatiable and so secret that it made you burn with shame. What would happen if you looked at your father in the eye and said, yes, I know that all you have is mine, but it's not enough. I can't fathom why, but your everything is not enough for me. I can't find contentment. I can't make my way to love. Somehow in your very presence, I am lost. I know these are terrifying things to admit to yourself, much less say out loud. But what if you had said them? What if you had said, something in me is broken, something in me can't embrace or enjoy what is already mine, something in me doesn't understand the joy that lives in giving myself away. Please help me. Wrap your arms around me. Hold me. I am full of hatred for my brother, but for myself most of all. Please teach me how to love. She goes on and continues. The challenge of your story, the challenge that tears at me is that you have rightness on your side. You are right to call for justice. You are right to ask why your brother's sins incurred no consequences. You are right to ask why your own loyalty seems to count for so little. You are right to find your father's version of love a bit much, a bit scandalous, and a bit risky, because it is. You've understood the point of your own story better than anyone. Yes, your brother squandered his inheritance. Perhaps by hoarding and withholding, you've actually also squandered yours. But the real prodigal in this story is your father, is he not? Over the top, undignified, hair-raising in his love. And of course, you're right to be appalled. Here's the thing. I don't know why your father never gave you a young goat or threw you and your friends a spontaneous party. I wish with all my heart he had. It makes me angry that he didn't. Was he waiting for you to ask? Were you in turn waiting for him to initiate? I know that self-protective mindset so well. If I have to ask for it, then it doesn't count. But maybe it does. Maybe there is something essential to be learned in the asking. We have to celebrate and rejoice. This is your father's final word to you as you stand out in the cold, your arms crossed, your fists clenched, and your heart bleeding. We have to celebrate and rejoice. Did you know, dutiful firstborn, did you know that you have to celebrate? Did you know that joy is a must in your Father's house, that partying is a duty? How astonishing that you live within arm's reach of your Father all these years and never glimpsed the merriment that was at his core. We have to celebrate and rejoice, he insists. But there you stand, lover of justice, 100% right, and 100% alone. What will it take for you to lean into celebration as a life teacher, to try out mercy as a soothing balm? Can you truly believe it? Some lessons can only be learned as you laugh and dance. Some hearts will only be healed at the feast. Here's your vindication, yours and mine. The power in this story is actually the older child's. It is yours. Your brother is inside. He's done breaking hearts for the time being. Now your Father stands in the doorway waiting for you to stop being lost, waiting for you to come home, waiting for you to take hold at last of the inheritance that has always been yours. Did you know your choices are that powerful? You, older brother, older son, gets to write the ending to this story. You get to write the ending. It's cold outside. The sun is setting. The party beckons. What will you do as the music grows sweeter? What will we choose, you and I? The parable that Jesus laid before those criticisms and those individuals is valid for us today. Will we choose to go to that party? Will we choose to go inside and join in a Father who is already celebrating with us, but we were too busy oftentimes to not see the celebration and too righteous to ask for it? I invite you this day into a place with our Heavenly Father to live in the inheritance that God already gave us. We just have to ask for it. It was already there.